When I was 19 years old, I was abducted and raped by a mass murderer, one who's etched into the American consciousness. John Wayne Gacy. Yeah, that guy from Chicago who dressed as a clown and murdered 33 boys and young men and buried them under his house and garage, and who authorities believe killed even more. And yes, I was in that house, alone. Well, not alone. He was there too. And here I am, 45 years later. I know, it's a lot. I recognize his personality, and I know that sounds crazy, but I dealt with, I knew he was crazy, and I knew that I couldn't fight him, and I knew that I couldn't anger him, and I just had to diffuse the situation, act like everything was okay all the time, because I grew up doing that. I did it my whole life. So I was in a situation that was similar to something. If I had fought him, I'd be dead. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But I didn't not fight him. I just didn't physically. Also, I was 19 years old, and I was a scrawny little kid, and that was a trap. That house was a trap, and I knew it was a trap at the time. I knew a movie executive at a big studio, and I told him I was thinking about telling my story, and I told him what happened to me, and I thought it was time to tell it, and he said, "What is that? That's the way you want to be remembered? That's the story you want to be remembered by?" And it stopped me at that time, and I thought maybe it isn't the story I want to be remembered by because it's ugly, and so I shelved it for a while, but then I came to the realization that it's my story. It might be ugly, but it's mine. And I wrote a one-man show called The Save. I wrote a memoir, and there was a publisher in New York. He was telling me it's difficult to sell a book, and he said to me, "Well, you are an actor." And I thought, right, of course. Why don't I do a one-man show? I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, in a big, beautiful house on Sheridan Road. If anybody knows the North Shore, Sheridan Road is the main drag, and a turn-of-the-century mansion. My dad was a baseball writer. He would call him the Dean of American Baseball Writers. He was a quintessential cigar-chomping baseball writer. He invented the save statistic. It's when relief pitchers don't get their due contribution when they come in late, and they maintain the lead, and they win the game, actually save the game from being lost. And he actually came up with it the year I was born. A privileged background that looked very good from the outside, but I had a difficult home life. It was a very unhappy place. My mother had a narcissistic personality disorder with a splash of Munchausen's by proxy. She didn't poison her children, but she definitely tried to diminish us any way that she possibly could. It was emotional violence. It made me feel like I was always wrong. No matter what I did, I was wrong. Any decision I made, anything I did was wrong. My sisters were greatly affected. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I have 4 older sisters, 3 of which are dead. And I think that they died due to diseases, opportunistic diseases, because of the stress they were under. I had to move out of the house when I was a kid, and I moved down the street with another family just to survive. And I ended up in my own apartment in downtown Chicago when I was 18 years old. And then when I was 19 years old, I got in this guy's car. Not too long after it happened, I told my sister Janet, she's closest to me in age, and I asked her not to tell anyone. And to her credit, she never did. Although my mom once said to me, "You know, your sister Janet was talking about that awful serial killer and how you could have been one of those boys that he killed. Why would she ever say something like that?" "I don't know," I said. That was the closest I ever came to talking to my mom about what happened to me. Yeah, both my parents went to their graves without knowing, and that's a good thing. Yeah, I made sure that I never heard either one of them tell me that it somehow was my fault. Yeah, that from them is something I'll never have to hear. About 10 years ago, my sister Janet and I talked about it again. We only talked about it twice. "Why didn't he kill you?" she asked. "Why did you survive?" Certainly a worthy question. I'm not sure I like the delivery, but it's a good question, and I do have an answer. I had learned skills that I was able to put into use so that I didn't lose. I didn't lose my life. I was able to maintain my save, myself. I realized that the skill set that I had as a kid allowed me, when my game got dicey, to maintain my lead and save the game. And I guess ultimately I'm giving myself credit for it. If this had happened to me and it wasn't him, nobody would care, which is interesting for me to think about, because there's a lot of other people that bad things happen to, and they don't, people aren't that interested. They're not interested in me. They're interested in him. And I know that, and that's fine. But that's a weird thing about our society. I was at a party, and we were standing around, and I was talking to someone. There was a guy I know who was a television writer, successful, and I told him what happened to me. And he said, oh, so you were in the house? I said, yeah, I was there. He said, what was it like? I said, well, I don't know. It was like dark, dim, and he had this like weird Polynesian bar thing. And he goes, oh, the tiki bar. And I said, oh, the tiki bar? How do you know he had a tiki bar? He goes, oh, I know everything about him. I'm obsessed with him. And I thought, first off, that set me back a few years. But I just don't know what the obsession is with serial killers. Like, I don't quite understand it. Every 6 or 8 months, he pops up. And someone will say, did you see the thing? And I'm like, no, I didn't see the thing. I heard about the thing. I don't want to see the thing. Someone said to me, well, when did he die? And I said, I'm not even sure. I don't know when he died. I don't know. I think he died in prison, but I don't know. And he said, you don't know? I said, no, I don't read anything. I don't have anything to do with him. And this person said, oh, so you haven't dealt with it. I said, oh, so I didn't deal with it right? I didn't deal with it the right way. What, am I supposed to look him up? Am I supposed to learn all? Am I supposed to study him? And then that would have been dealt with correctly? I was a tough kid, but I was navigating on my own. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating fact. Yeah, they thought it was funny that some guy had tied me up and raped me. Although I have sat with audiences while they laughed at similar situations in popular movies like Pulp Fiction. So there is that. People have very strong emotional responses to the words rape, abduction, serial killer. I mean, anyone I've told, no matter who, they just, I don't know, they disappear somewhere trying to absorb what I've just told them. And I don't blame them. I guess I would too. It's just that I'm stuck over here watching. One of my big messages with this show is that I'm not a victim. Something happened to me. It was one night, and I made a pact with myself at that time that he controlled me for one night, but he would not control my life. And I really made a solid decision on that he was not going to be the identifying factor in my life, that this trauma was not going to guide my life. I just want everyone to understand that we all go through stuff, all of us. There's no shame in that. Everybody stumbles. That car that I got in, that possibility, passes all of us all the time. We all do experience trauma, whatever it is. No one's trauma is greater than anyone else's. It's not, because you're not experiencing it, so you don't know what that trauma is. You don't, and I don't judge other people's trauma, or how they deal with it, or what it means to them. I'm proud of the accomplishments I've made. I'm performing now in Los Angeles, but of course I want to take the show to New York, I want to take the show to Chicago, I want to take the show to London, for sure. And I'd also like to take it to smaller cities too. I mean, I'm going to spend the next few years on this. I want to do my show, and it's exciting to do a show, and I'm really proud of it. And I think maybe it'll help people. When people hear it, they say it's an inspiring story, so that makes me happy that it's an inspiring story. I think I've always tried to choose the positive. I'm super lucky. I have great friends. I'm happy. I'm delusionally happy, I think.